In the Hearts and Minds, Book 0, The Birth of a Hero, Story 10, Everybody Wants to Be a Chicken. 3 years after joining Flavors of the World, Pinata still woke up surprised. From beneath her cheek, the soft, ticklish sensation of down feathers squeezed a half-baked sneeze from her nose. She blinked in wary disorientation, taking in the beaded curtains at the door, crunchy rose petals along the vanity, and Baker's hat with its newer, even floppier additions, sitting on the stool next to a sleepy biscuit. This was paradise. This was home. The secret base of the Truvian resistance was an abandoned dairy farm, fashioned into a maple syrup farm. The gate was never locked or closed, and city officials visited regularly, conversing quite amicably with those who would secretly set their caches of weapons on fire and interrupt black market deals between national spies. It was everything Pinata could have ever wanted. Everything she couldn't have imagined, couldn't have ever guessed. This was hers. Theirs. The beaded curtain jiggled, clacking against the heavy door as it was shoved sideways. The carroty head that popped inside was hardly more than bangs. Too busy was the head focusing on not looking up to realize he appeared more ghostly than the apparitions lounged around Pinata's room. "Good morning, my prince," she greeted, sighing in contentment as she sat up in one fluid motion, patting her shoulders and smoothing her sides. Her nightdress had embroidered curlicues above their edges. She'd used orange. She was using a lot of orange in her sewing these days. Iago's head stopped its probing movements, and a hand scratched at the beads and the hair. "Okay, right. Good morning, Pinata. Pep and R are deep diving, so we're short-handed. An inspection's coming, and Flora wants you to, greet them." Without pausing her cat-like stretches, Pinata said, "And if I get dragged away in handcuffs for being a runaway bride of the president's top gangster, will you save me?" "Uh-huh," he replied. "Sure, whatever you say. Think you can still do the morning run?" "Of course," Pinata beamed. "The harvesters have been awake for hours. They need their breakfast more than I do." Iago paused, lips pursing enough to kiss a bead, and then he retreated. "Goodbye, my prince," Pinata called, to which there was no reply. "You know, dearie," Miss Y rocked on an unseen chair beside the canopied bed. Her corporeal form was mostly dark and blue, but occasionally the light would hit and warm her the color of a robin's egg, accentuating the shape of lips and the curve of a nose that were not usually defined. "That boy is not really a prince." "But he saved me, just like in the tales of princes," Pinata argued, changing out of her clothes. Many of the ghosts turned away. Blue streaks that tilted like bottom-heavy blobs, not human shapes. Pinata couldn't care less if they saw her unclothed. "Which princes?" Miss Y scoffed, still rocking despite Pinata's nakedness. "The ones who awarded their damsels with a captivating marriage, or the ones who awarded their damsels with a tower and no key?" Pinata just laughed, unbothered by the spirit's sarcasm. "Good morning, Cherry. Good morning, Rosette," Pinata called as she pushed a trolley laden with covered food into the syrup room. Giant metal barrels that used to process milk and now processed syrup took up most of the barn's space. Not much had to change after the new residents had removed the scent of dairy from the tubes. "I told you, babe," Cherry began, hand on an axle that created a low, grinding noise as the metal barrels rotated on a giant platform. Our new names are Suki and Carmela. And yours is Pika, babes. You registered the name change with us last Thursday. Better not forget it. Pinata dipped in a curtsy, though her smile became twisted into a pout. But I told you I'm allergic to pecans. Why would I name myself that? For freedom. You know everybody's got to change their names to something sweet. Screw your ancestors and all that. Pinata opened her mouth to remind them that pecans weren't actually sweet on their own, when an abrupt voice drowned out her thoughts. You're allergic to pecans? Iago had appeared in the doorway, leaning against the barn opening. With 3 sets of eyes flashing toward him, he coughed lightly into his hand, standing up straight. We have them here, and you were allergic the whole time? You haven't mentioned that before? Pinata smiled at him sweetly. He didn't look at it, scuffing his shoes into the dirt instead. I know not to eat them. Those 2 are so gross, Cherry whispered to Rosette, louder than if she'd just spoken normally. Rosette, not even bothering with the pretense of whispering, replied, If they don't do something about it soon, I'm going to tear my braids out at the root. Pinata's smile warmed, and that was the smile Iago finally peered up and witnessed. He frowned through the sudden redness burning in his ears and the light dusting of freckles on his cheeks. She bounced over to him, swinging her arms like she couldn't stop moving, even though she was already moving. Hey, lover boy, humble isn't really in these days, Rosette continued, removing the giant white suit she wore in the barns. Cherry was already stuffing sausage gravy and biscuits into her mouth, not even swallowing the umami, before throwing in a couple chunks of cantaloupe, too. Wild's more the craze right now. Iago scoffed, shaking his head. I don't know what you're talking about, he said strongly. Crossing his arms, he continued in a somewhat pouty voice. I'm here to take her to Flora. The inspectors are due any minute. Cherry peered up at him from the tops of her cat-eye glasses. Drooping chains affixed to the earrings that dangled below her chin pooled forward so that even her jewelry looked judgmental. She knows where it is. What's going to happen to her on a 2-minute walk? Off-kilter, Iago began to stammer something about Pinata asking him to save her when Cherry cut in. It's all hands right now, kid. Someone has to be in the control room at all times, ready to go at a moment's notice. That's you. Get moving. There'll be time to flirt later when this fake throne falls and Truvia can't do whatever they want to whoever they want. But that might take a while, Rosette commented. They might fall out of love by then. Wait, it'll be sooner now that we got our little Miss Spy here. Cherry nudged Pinata with her hip, nearly sending her sprawling. Nothing can happen without our knowledge, now that we have a horde of ghosts on our side. They won't get away with what they've done. Not on my watch. She took a brief, stabilizing breath from her impassioned speech, then hip-checked Pinata one more time. Best get going, babes. Those company dogs are always starving as soon as they get here. Pinata did not get dragged out, kicking and screaming, in handcuffs, the way she most feared. Perhaps the gambler had given up on finding her? It had been 3 years, after all. What scared Pinata most was what he could have done to her family if he thought she'd left willingly and hadn't been kidnapped by the rebels. What scared her more than that was if she had been replaced. It felt wrong sometimes to wake up in a 4-canopy bed, surrounded by her own stuff, day in, day out. Was she allowed to live in peace after leaving behind all that disrepair? It felt, too, as if she were waiting. Everyone who had joined Flavors of the World were stuck waiting, too. Even the ghosts she'd met once coming to this country were stuck, waiting. Pinata wondered if she would ever learn what it was like to be at peace without the fear of looming storm clouds at the peripherals of the sky. The Truvian representatives had left, and so Pinata was on her way back from the main house. Only one of the men had tried to touch her leg as she served them tea, but Flora had put a stop to it with a bewitching, grandmotherly smile. Pinata quite liked Flora. She didn't let anyone push her around, but neither did she use force. There was a strength hidden deep in her soul, and it exuded brilliant light. Pinata was lucky to have met a woman such as that. She was kind of like a younger version of her grandmother, who had always fought against her mother. She always took Pinata's side. Her sight shouldn't be hidden, as if it were a shameful secret. The women in her family had always seen spirits. It was only recently that new superpowered beings, the Frosted, had appeared. The two weren't the same, but Mother was adamant that nobody would ever believe that. Grandmother always countered that if Mother hadn't hidden her powers her entire life, the world would already be used to their abilities, and they wouldn't have to hide. It didn't matter in the end, though, when they shipped Pinata off to the heart of their enemy all the same. Her mood fuzzed into the dark blue of dusk, and Pinata stumbled across a campfire. It was only lit whenever there was a new recruit. You know how chickens are bred to be meatier, but if you see them out in the wild, they're skinny? Pepper twirled his mustache, blue today, as he regarded a hooded figure across the flames. Arlie snorted, and Pinata smiled. It reminded her of when she first came here 3 years ago. They had talked about chicken legs then, too, but it had ended up with Iago saying something like, I like your legs. I mean chicken legs. You're not a chicken. Wait, you don't have chicken legs. I mean... Pinata closed her eyes, a soft smile that leached straight up from her heart, dampening the fuzzy dark she'd fallen under. At the fire, Iago noticed her, springing to his feet. When he walked toward her, it always looked like the distance was a yawning desert. He had to cross it as quickly as he could to get to her side. He never dawdled, moseyed up to her, or stopped until he was right beside her. Pinata liked that. She liked it a lot. There's that look again, one of the grouchiest ghosts remarked, only to be shushed by several others. Let them be. Quiet. When he landed, it was so heavy that he tipped toward her. If there had been any light left in the day, his shadow would have covered her completely. Pinata smiled. Hello, my prince.